Thank you for the great introduction. Like was said, my name is Julien. I work for MarketAxess. And my presentation today is about when two worlds collide, machine learning in the corporate bond market. And let me start with a quick introduction about the bond market and how different it is from the equity market. Usually when people think about financial markets, they think about high-frequency trading, microseconds matter, and the bond market is nowhere near that. There are many reasons that explain the differences. The first one is how trading occurs. In the bond market, it's over-the-counter, meaning that counterparties interact directly with one another, as opposed to a centralized exchange in the equity market. Size and fragmentation is also very different. Even though the dollar size is pretty much the same, 23 trillion for the bond market and 26 trillion for the equity market, the fragmentation and the size in terms of number of assets are very different. 22,000 bonds for only 3,000 public companies in the equity market. And even within one company like General Electric, you have more than 300 bonds and only one stock price. The turnover is also very different because the strategies of trading are going to be very different. Very low in the bond market, very high in the equity market. And this is driven by a few reasons. The first one is the riskiness of assets is quite different. Bonds tend to be less risky than stocks. And therefore, the investor pool is going to be different as well. And for example, insurance companies favor bonds over stocks, and they tend to have a buy and hold approach that will limit trading volume. On the other hand, in the equity trading world, hedge funds tend to prefer those assets because they are risk hunting. And as a consequence, they also trade more often and driving volumes up. Finally, the share of trading that is done electronically is also extremely different, only 30%, and maybe that's an overestimation for the bond market, and it's 80% for the equity market. So all these factors are explaining of like the challenge to get good pricing in the bond market, and whereas in the equity market, it's very readily available. And the talk today, my presentation where we use machine learning, is all about pricing. And before I delve into more about how we solve the problem, let me take a step back and talk to you about my company, MarketAxess, and how they fit at the center of the trading bond, of the electronic bond cycle. So before MarketAxess, historically, trading was happening, as I said, over the counter, and it was done through voice or with phone. So very inefficient process. A trader usually, so a price taker, and there is this dichotomy in the investor world with price takers and price makers. Think of price takers as the traditional investing companies, insurance companies, mutual funds, pension funds, and think of the price makers as the big banks that make markets in exchange for a fee. And the service they provide to the taker community is this immediacy of trading and this easiness of trading. But before MarketAxess, in the voice world, it was working in this hub and spoke approach, where a price taker would start reaching out via phone to a lot of potential counterparties, and it would take a lot of time, and they wouldn't be able to reach out to every potential counterparties. MarketAxess came in and electronified that process, and now before you could reach to 5 or 6 potential counterparties in like 1 hour, now with MarketAxess, you can actually reach to 60 or 70 counterparties in the space of 5 or 10 minutes. And finally, 7, 8 years ago, we took this process a step further and launched open trading, or all-to-all trading. And now we are blurring the lines between who is a taker and who is a maker, and we allow everybody to be both takers and makers. And I know that at H2O, the catchphrase is makers gonna make, but at MarketAxess, it's more takers gonna make. And now we want to empower the community with infrastructure and technology to be, for everybody to be makers. Now we want to empower them with the right data. And like I said many times, pricing is challenging. And you can see in this approach why. Trading over the counter doesn't lead to a lot of pricing transparency pre-trade. You don't really know in this world of like you can reach 1,000 counterparties, you don't really know who's going to be able to provide a price because there is no pre-trade transparency. You add the massive size of the market and its opacity with the fact that bonds don't trade every day, and you get a big challenge as to when it comes to pricing. And pricing is challenging, but pricing is necessary to allow everybody to be price makers. Fortunately for us, it's a data-driven world. Even in the corporate bond market, and even if it's a small data world, it's still a data world. And we're going to use our position in the bond market as the leading electronic trading platform with our unique data to solve this problem of challenging problem of pricing. So we created this product called Composite Plus, which uses machine learning to find the most consistent and accurate prices. And for the last time, I promise I'm going to talk about the challenges of pricing. So we saw the size and the opacity as factors, but there is another factor that maybe people will have a harder time wrapping their head around, is the fact that at even the same time t, for the same bond B, there is no one price, but multitudes of prices. And there are many dimensions explaining these multitudes of prices. I chose today to focus on the size dimension. So let me walk you through it, the graph on the bottom left corner. So if you take a bond and you want to buy the bond as a liquidity taker, as a price taker, and the bond base price is about $100, you have this price variation where the x-axis is the size. On the left side, you have small sizes, and on the right side, you have bigger sizes. So you see a price variation from $100, almost $05 to $99.99, so about 5 or 6 cents, explained only by the size of trading for the same asset, so quite substantial and quite surprising. Philosophically and economically, you can explain it the following way. As a maker, you're here to make market and to provide liquidity. If it's a world with human traders, you're going to spend the same amount of time if you have to trade $50,000 than if you have to trade $5 million. And you want to compensate the same way for your time, and since the multiplier is different, you're going to charge more on small sizes than you're going to charge on bigger sizes. And that explains the size effect. So the solution with Composite Plus is to turn and transform these diverse but well-understood data points into well-defined and consistent prices via a supervised machine learning algorithm. And the supervision piece here is about the fact that we have a tape with all the trades. And we want to predict where the next trade is going to be at. But like you saw with the graph that I just went through, you can't pick all the trades and say, let me find out what the next price is going to be for all the trades. You want to be very selective and apply a very thought window to reduce and only focus on what's very consistent. So in this case, it's the gray box here. Everything that's on the right of $150,000 exhibits consistency and low noise compared to the small sizes. And so for the calibration piece, we're going to be, like I said, very selective about the trades that we train the model on. For the feature engineering piece, we are going to be a lot more free. We live in a small data world, and I know it's surprising to hear these days, small data world, but we want to make the most out of every data point. And even the small trades that exhibit different patterns and a lot more noise, we want to make use of them. And the feature engineering piece, we're going to be able to use everything. And what is the goal of all of this? Well, the goal of all of this is to transform low-quality data points into high-quality market data to drive automation and efficiency. On the left side, you have the inputs. So I mentioned some of them already, tape with all the trades. And on top of that, the unique data that MarketAxess has, because electronic trading leaves behind a lot more data than just having a tape of all the trades. And we combine these diverse, well-understood, but also noisy data points into one price, which is Composite Plus. And now we have a consistent picture of where pricing takes place in the bond market. And we can widen to different applications. And those applications are going to be pre-trade, during the trade, and post-trade. So pre-trade is price discovery. So knowing what the actual price is like I mentioned, not that easy. And as a human trader, if you're looking at different data sources, you're not going to be able to aggregate that information well. Composite Plus does that for you, and you can have a picture of a consistent picture of where the market is trading at. So that's pre-trade. Now moving on to the trade and what drives the business of MarketAxess, because we're a trading platform, market making and automation. So we saw earlier that we want everybody to be a maker, everybody to be a price maker. And with the tool of pricing, now everybody can be that maker. And since we have more actors that want to be that, they can use our pricing. And automation is about automating every part of the trading process and allowing our customers to do more with less and focus on some trades that are more difficult and the trades that are easier to do, automate them as much as possible. And finally, post-trade, you have a transaction cost analysis and lets you analyze and reflect on the trades that you've performed and how your execution was compared to a consistent benchmark that is Composite Plus, and maybe decide later on to change your trading process and your trading workflow. So we've been successful and in using our data to drive automation and efficiency. We've luckily won 3 awards from well-respected publication. But there is still a lot to do in the bond market to electronify it, automate it, make it more efficient. And we're hiring, so if anybody has any interest, please come talk to me at the end. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And if you have any questions, happy to respond to them.
So transaction data or transaction information is usually held in the hand of the banks, right? So how do you guys get the information such that the model can make intelligent predictions or help make intelligent
great question.
Pricing decisions?
So we have 2 main data sets. Actually, there is the regulator in the corporate bond market, FINRA, holds a tape of all the trades. And on top of that, we oversee about 20% of the trading. So all these trades that happen on our platform, we have even more data than just the trade. We can see everybody that interacted with that trade with more granularity than you can see on the public tape, which only lists the trades.
Okay. There you go.
So you're using AI to make the predictions. When your price is wrong, what happens then? So when your AI is wrong, what happens when I make the trade?
So what happens when the price is wrong?
You're making a price prediction on the bond price, right?
Yeah.
So I buy that bond, but the price is wrong. What's the situation there?
Well, you have enough counterparties in the market to trade, and not everybody is using our price to trade, so you would self-correct if it's wrong. Fortunately for us, it's the most accurate pricing source out there, so it doesn't happen that often. But the market can self-correct when it's wrong.
Let's see a few hands. All good. Thank you.
Thank you.